project is up to, not just looking at the price movement, right? Because eventually, the whole ecosystem of the project and the trajectory of the project decide the long-term value of the token. So some basic points I'm going to go over today. I'd like to start by talking about the mission of Stellar, what problem are we solving, and a basic overview of the technology. And I also want to do a basic comparison with Stellar versus some of the other major blockchain technologies out there, because that's, I would say that that's the most questions that we usually get from the community. So I think it would be helpful for people to understand. And then lastly, I would also like to provide what are our main goals for this year, 2018, both on the technical side and also on the commercial side. All right, so for people who have some ideas around Stellar, we are a blockchain platform for payments, right? So when Jed Michaela founded Stellar back in 2014, he wanted to solve the issue of the frictions in payments. So if you look at the payments nowadays, for people who live in here, you might use credit card or Kakao Pay, and for people like in China, WeChat Pay and Alipay are very popular, and there's almost no friction. However, when it comes to cross-border contacts, then you will see a lot of issues are happening, right? So the average remittance fee cross-border around the world is around 8 to 9%, right? But when you look at some specific regions, for example, Africa, so intra-Africa, so between two different African countries, sometimes the remittance fee can go all the way up to 20%, right? So the poor population or the poor regions are actually paying more just because they're poor. And this is extremely unfair, and it creates a vicious cycle in their local economy. And we think that the whole reason this happened is you have all these different financial systems and different financial institutions, but they're on their own isolated island, right? If you're a big bank, you're connected through the SWIFT system. But if you're a local remittance company, you have your own proprietary system, and whenever you do payouts to different partners, you need to do hundreds of different integrations with them, tons of APIs to manage, and it's just it creates those frictions involved, long time of processing it, high fees which transfer to the customer, and also risks on the AML and KYC front. So those are the issues that we see, and Jed saw it, and then want to design a distributed system to resolve this issue. So when we look at SWIFT system, which was built in the 70s, right? Payments are very, very different compared to payments nowadays. In the past, we usually see cross-border payments coming in large volume, but less frequent, mostly commerce-related. But nowadays, I would want to send my friend in the US $10, but I'm not able to do it right now. There's even machine-to-machine payments cross-border, and the current financial system definitely are not supporting it. You also see all these different players, as I mentioned earlier, that's getting those non-banking financial systems, financial service providers are getting more and more market shares. A great example would be M-Pesa in Kenya, right? Their system, they're getting 90% of the population using their services in Kenya, which is not even comparable to the banks. So these systems are great internally, but they're still not an interoperable ecosystem among them. So when it comes to cross-border, it's still not solving the issue. So when Jed wanted to design this whole system, a great aspiration that he got was the email, right? So the reason that we're able to send email from gmail.com to your, say, Yahoo email address is because we're all following the same protocol, SMTP protocol, right? So if payments can also follow the same protocol, then we can provide an ecosystem where all these different systems and institutions are interconnected. So this is the goal, or this is the mission of Stellar. We are a global open source protocol for payments. So how we do it? I'm gonna talk about the upper layer first, and then talk about the layer below that stack. So two main functions. One is Stellar is a platform that any entity or any even individual that it can issue a token on the Stellar ledger. So we usually call those anchors, call those institutions anchors. So anchors are usually licensed financial institutions. They take deposit and honor withdrawals from their clients, from their customers. And then as they do it in the real world, they mirror the same transaction on the Stellar network, right? So for example, there's a, let's just say like a Bank in America are the USD anchor on Stellar, and they issue a USD, Bank of America USD on the Stellar network, and Alipay can be the Chinese yuan anchor on the same network. So they are the bridge of linking the real world and the Stellar digital world, and can digitally represent the currencies and assets. So I think a good comparison that's helped people to understand is you can think of it as a, I guess people know about Tether, right? The Tether USDT. It's not a great example, but it works a similar way. So eventually, as the network grows, you probably would have, say, Tether issuing USDT on Stellar. You have the Chase Bank of issuing USD on Stellar. And then I think that, I personally believe, people can have different opinions, but you would have central banks issuing their fiat currency on the same ledger. And I believe that those would be the one that has the highest credibility, but people can have different opinions on that. So these are all, because Stellar is a open sourced public chain, so any entity can do that. And then eventually, who decides the value of it is the market, right? Today, I can issue an Ella coin on Stellar, which represent certain utility, just like the way that people are tokenizing different things and issuing ICOs. So that's the first main function of Stellar. And then secondly, other than being able to send from point A to point B, there's also a built-in decentralized exchange. We call it Paxdaq for now, and we're actually trying to get some good names. So if you have any good ideas, let us know. So yeah, I would say that probably we haven't done a great job in the past of marketing it out, Stellar as a decentralized exchange, until last year when all these new ICOs coming up and these DEX becomes a very innovative idea. But our system has been up and running for 3 years, and that's how cross-border, cross-asset transactions are facilitated on the Stellar network. Right? So how does that work? You would have an option, option on Stellar to upload the order books. So for example, we have a Nigerian Naira anchor that issuing this digital asset, and the Chinese yuan anchor on Stellar. You can have a role called market maker that's updating all these order books on chain, and those order books are being used to facilitate a cross-asset transaction. And those transactions can have up to 6 different hops, so that if the system find out that the best payment path is going from Nigerian Naira to USD to Bitcoin to XLM to CNY, If that's the best path, then the system will automatically identify it and facilitate the asset transfer. And this whole process is one atomic transaction, meaning that it either succeed or fail. So no one's going to end up with holding any asset that they don't want. And this is how cross-border transfers are being facilitated on Stellar. All right, so just to summarize how the flow works in terms of cross-border remittance or cross-border transactions. So now we have someone, Amy, living in the US, wanted to send her friend Tunde, who lives in Nigeria, she wanted to send $10. If you're using existing banking system or even Western Union, it's not even possible because it's not enough to cover the fees, right? But if Amy's bank in the US is a USD anchor on Stellar and Tunde's mobile wallet provider is a Naira anchor on Stellar, then this becomes possible, right? So when Amy initiates the transaction, the first thing the two anchors does is they would use a built-in compliance protocol to check the AML and KYC information, making sure that not like there's no bad people sending those transactions. After both parties giving the green light of this transfer, then the transfer got announced, broadcasted onto the Stellar network. Now the system search all these order books available on the network and identify the best conversion path, right? And after that, USD are being converted into Naira, and then Tunde was able to receive Naira back in his home country. So there are different ways of how the settlement can be done. People can use fiat currency directly to fiat currency, which looks a little bit similar to the pre-funded model that remittance companies are using, or Stellar Lumen can be used as a bridge currency, which we think is it takes the most benefits of the whole network, because each party would only need to manage the XLM and whatever assets they have on their end, and then it can be freely traded to all the different asset pairs in the whole network. All right, so we just discussed the two main functions of the Stellar network and how they were used to facilitate cross-asset transfer. And then below, underneath that stack, it's the consensus mechanism, right? So Stellar used SCP Stellar Consensus Protocol, which was authored by our chief scientist, Professor David Mazuras from Stanford University. So SCP is the first implemented federated version of Byzantine agreement. It's pretty mouthful, but in layman's term, what it means is for people who heard of the permissioned network using PBFT consensus mechanism, that means all the validators need to agree on the same thing. So it's a closed-up environment, right? So you have a centralized, authorized entity approving who can join or participate in the network. But what SCP allows is it's similar in a way that you're using Byzantine tolerant mechanism, but in the open environment. So we have the concept of quorum slices. So for example, if I am Bank of America on Stellar, and I already have existing relationship with Chase Bank's, Federal Reserve, and Bank of China, and they're all validators on Stellar, and I can choose them, and they're my friends, they're my circle, so I can be this circle, and then this is someone who I don't have any trust relationship with, but he's also a participant on the network, but I don't need to care if he approves or not. So eventually we have all these different quorum slices in the network. And as long as there is sufficient overlap of these quorum slices, then the entire network achieves consensus. So this is really mirroring, the existing relationships in the real world, right? Because all these different entities are already have commercial relationships and are doing business together. So we're leveraging that. And SMP is really the fundamentals of why Stellar is faster, why the ledger syncs 3 to 5 seconds, why we can process about 1,000 transactions per second. So SMP is really the fundamentals of that. All right, so this is a bit wordy slide, but I really want to provide a more in-depth analysis on what's our competitive advantage when it comes to payments and tokenization, right? Payments is what I described earlier, doing cross-border transactions, doing remittance, interbank transfer. So, we're open source technology. It's a public network that anyone can join. As I mentioned earlier, very fast, 3 to 5 seconds, and the TPS is around 1,000 transactions. So we also have a built-in, messaging tool that different participants can use to exchange information, which is lacking for remittance companies or payments companies because they're not part of the SWIFT system, right? And then there's also the decentralized exchange that facilitates different assets transfer. For tokenization, which is something that we started to push more starting last year. So some examples of tokenization would be ICO or non-ICO project, but they want to tokenize some of their assets, real-world assets, right? So why Stellar would be a good platform for those use cases? It's actually very similar to payments if you think about it. So if you look at ICO space right now, I would say that the majority of the token utilization is for payments. The use case is for payments in their own ecosystem, right? So thinking about payments, what do they need? They need low cost, because it doesn't make any sense if you're like paying like $1 for every like decentralized Airbnb booking that you make. It needs it needs speed. You can't like wait there forever, like for a few minutes, for even like an hour or two for the transaction to be confirmed. And it also needs small attack phase, right? So we've heard about all these parity wallet incidents, etc. So those are the things that ICO or tokenization project are looking for, and this is what Stellar can offer. So I think that Cyrus from Mobius is gonna present later, but we've have more and more projects start to opt Stellar as an ICO platform, and Mobius is one of the first major one that is done on Stellar. We expect to have about 20 different ICO projects launching their token on Stellar the first half of this year. So that would be very exciting, and I would encourage you guys to keep updated on that and consider Stellar as an option if you have any project in mind. Lastly, the Stellar comparison with some of the major tokens. I think this is the most questions I get in those meetups or events is what's the difference between Stellar and Ripple? So I would just go through it so that people won't ask me again today. I would admit that both were quite similar. So I mentioned about the upper layer, the decentralized exchange and asset issuance. So on that layer, it's quite similar, right, if you compare Stellar and Ripple. But underneath that, the consensus mechanism is very different. We completely rewrote the code base from the fork in 2014. And then I really believe that governance is a really important factor. I think that that's something that a lot of people overlook, but it's very important because Stellar, we believe that what we are building, what we're providing is a protocol. All you can see is a standard. So if a standard is governed by a for-profit company, let's just think about internet, right? Internet is a standard. If internet is governed by a for-profit company, would it be like how we're using it now and how different companies and business models are building on it now? I don't think so. So this is our fundamental difference when we think about what product we're building, what technology we're building, and decided to be a nonprofit entity that governs the core technology. Yeah, so other things, you guys can take a look at this, and I'm more than happy to answer any specific questions after this session, but I'm not going to go over every individual one. Okay, lastly, what we're trying to do in 2018 this year. So the most important thing for a blockchain technology is really adoption, right? I think that the majority of the projects out there in the market is still at the very early stage, conceptual stage, whereas Stellar, we are very focused on getting adoption in the real world. So as I mentioned earlier, we're driving adoption in the remittance, cross-border remittance space. If you've been following us for some time, you will be seeing that every month we're adding about like 5 to 10 different partners, remittance partners around the world to join the Stellar network. So we're going to keep doing that for this year. And we're very excited. We think that for this year, the Paxdaq transaction volume is going to be going through this critical growing point where a lot of those fiat currencies or even crypto tokens transactions on Stellar is going to boosting. So on the technology side, Paxdaq, right? Paxdaq, it's always there, but we don't. In the past, we don't really have a very good front end, a UI for Paxdaq. So late last year, we just recruited a great product team based in New York that's specifically focused on further developing Paxdaq front end. So the goal is, as a user, from the user perspective, when you get on Paxdaq, you wouldn't even tell the difference between like you're using Kraken or you're using the Stellar Paxdaq. And then lastly, the Lightning Network. Lightning Network, this has been mentioned a couple of times in the past, but as the project itself, the Lightning project itself is getting more progress, we're also keeping up with it, and hopefully this year and next year, we're going to finish the integration to the Lightning Network. That will really help us to increase the scalabilities when there's more transactions going through Stellar Network, and it also help to add a private channeling function. So for example, if you want to completely you don't want your transaction histories to be seen on the Stellar Network, this can be done by using the Lightning Network. On the community front, we're going to have more and more meetups, more and more AMA sessions on the Reddit, subreddit channel. And then we also want to focus on developing the developer community for this year, so that there are more developers getting trained on Stellar and getting trained on the know-hows to build applications on Stellar, and also encourage more content, for the community members. So those are the three main objects for this year. And I would really encourage you guys to subscribe our newsletter to get updated. So every month we send out a newsletter, summarize what we did on the technical front and on the commercial front of Stellar, and what's our agenda for the next month. Also want to mention, if there are any developers here, at present we have a quarterly long hackathon called Stellar Build Challenge. So if you are interested to build a Stellar wallet, any applications, remittance app, etc., you can enter this build challenge, and the winner of it will receive a certain amount of Lumen rewards. This is our Korean Kakao Talk page, so if you're using Kakao Talk, welcome to join. And we're also super active on Reddit, Twitter, less on Facebook and Slack, I would say. So Reddit and Twitter, Kakao Talk here, and we have a Stellar Meetup Seoul page. So in the future, we're going to announce more and more events in here. And if there anyone here wants to, do local Stellar Meetup, do contact me after this, and we're more than happy to have non-Stellar employee hosting events. All right.
Thank you, Ella. So I have a question for you guys. Who has ever used a decentralized exchange before? Not so many. Well, I hope that Stellar is going to bring some change to that. I think it's really cool. The problem with centralized exchanges is, of course, the regulation. It's very easy to regulate a centralized exchange. It's very hard to regulate a decentralized exchange, so that should keep some balance in the market. So I just want to let you guys know that the pizza arrived, so we're gonna have a short break. So grab some food if you're hungry, and then I'll announce when we start again in about 10 to 15 minutes. Okay? All right, thank you.
Yeah. See, you were also asking. Oh, yeah, that's what Are you inviting me? Yeah. Yeah, so we have these events are. Oh, yeah, my name is Major. Almost like we almost bring actually based on marketing. For example, we got a competitor, so once they're getting into the marketing, right, that's good. And then buy it for us to pedal. I know other people that do, so if I come across anyone that is looking to I chat my friend through the
Please, I did. No, it's okay. I'm going to basically, we see that Gopax will do a celebratory day.
It's kind of hard to say.
Tomorrow.
We were trying to develop a project for nano terrace. So consumer data.
Yeah, the stuff is on Google Docs.
We do I'm gonna grab something, please. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Are you like Asian? Let me just introduce my friend. He's actually working with the this is a multi-year. So all the teams are from ICON. They're done with the private. They're actually ready for pre-sale. It's gonna be in like round 2. Is there any like way? Sure. Let me talk to you afterwards. Yeah. I mean, you guys, it's a multi-currency wallet, so we're trying to put in as much as possible. And one of the advantage, I guess, we're based in Korea, so it's most of the wallet users in Korea.
I mean, I haven't really
So it's for all the currencies.
We're trying to add as much as coins and tokens as possible, but one of the reasons it's app-based, it's not a web-based wallet. So the reason why we're starting the project is that a lot of investors and traders in Korea, they're used by either like overseas wallets, and they haven't liked it when they're using it. And especially when they're trying to get customer service, they have to email. A lot of investors are like mid-30s to 40s, new entry investors, and we're trying to make it a simple UI and UX base. Yeah, so we're actually getting MVP ready in April. Our white paper is going to come out this week or so. If you don't mind, we'll send you the white paper right after you translate ours.
Yeah. Are you using ERC?
Right now our token's ERC. For the wallet, we're starting with ERC and BTC. And then we're going to start adding as our team gets bigger. It's like hanging together. Yeah. I mean, one of the projects that we're doing we're co-working with local exchange to actually make an incubator in Korea, and that's what so that's why we're trying to Alright, thank you so much. I don't want to hold you up too much. I'll email you. Alright, thank you. Yes, that's one thing. For instance, products are. Sorry. Friends the way products are presented, and also there will be a functionality of loyalty program. So token companies that are
So there's like different devices around the shop.
yeah, it's like,
tracking,
well,
like,
actually,
the
I think
behavior.
I'm free with her. Yes, the most definitely. But that's just so we're to provide advantages to the customers. For instance, we buy our organism, go in alley of the store, receive the payment, and use the I'm not explanation as well. Yeah, exactly. So maybe to Shanghai. And also, yeah, smaller, so I just got coming soon first. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, based on price point, they are going to launch the IC in a couple of months. So Christmas Day. You can keep it there.
So I do
That's 6 months more than we can.
I hope it stays because you're not
Stellar Development Foundation is a nonprofit that governs the Stellar Sport Network, the blockchain, right? And then you have on the side for-profit company for 5 years. So when we are dealing with handling all those major relationships with business companies, banks, companies that need commercial agreement with and need us to provide service, that relationship is handled by 5 years. So there is a for-profit company. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of activities in Southeast Asia. So the money transfer side, Indonesia, Malaysia, or Philippines, Thailand, they all have stellar access. So there's a lot. That's a good market.
you also like different
Impact investors. So when, yeah, I mean,
obviously the winner is still
yeah. We have impact investors from our first round of fundraising. Yeah.
And I hope the pizza is tasty, but let's get started in about a few minutes. So if you would like to go back to your seat.
Like, we want to take our strategy to take money, small amount of money from different countries, because as we enter those countries, like the investors can help us with natural resources.
So do you have any
Yeah, there's definitely going to be another round. Timing wise, maybe like second half of this year or even this year.
we run accelerator
Oh, okay. Oh, really?
so it's an impact acceleration.
Is there any like money transfer related businesses here?
So this year we are looking for specific not only for crypto. We are looking for those kind of publicities. So I guess, either you know any companies
So you guys don't touch tokens, right?
So we are open to that actually.
Yeah, do you have art?
You're also interested.
Not sure like how to fell into it. They're serving the
Once that's done, the demo day and actually the public investment. So, you know, it's
brochure or like a one-pager of the program, and then I can forward it to the project.
Alright, everyone, grab a seat. Feel free to take your pizza to the seat. Just to keep the schedule a bit, we have to continue. Otherwise, it's going to be a very late night. Although I don't mind. You might do.
Is this okay to see it? Yeah, awesome. It feels so awkward now that you're doing. Oh, where are you from? I'm from Canada. Yeah. Yeah, don't worry. This is just going to be edited. Like the audio is not. So yeah, you don't have to worry about like looking at this camera or anything. Okay, just do your thing.
Alright, I hope the pizza was good and tasty, and hopefully it was still warm as well. Unfortunately, they were a little bit late with the delivery, so again, apologies. I was really stressed out, so if I don't seem very upbeat or energetic, that was just because I was worrying that you guys didn't get your food and that things didn't go as planned. But we are back on track, and I'm very excited to present the featured resources of the month. So, Cryptominded organizes events all around the world every month. So, last month we were in Tallinn, before that we were in San Francisco, we've been in Shanghai, and this is our 4th event here in Seoul. And so what we do every month, we feature a few resources that we think you might find interesting that you might didn't know yet. So the first resource is CryptoPanic, and CryptoPanic is a website that aggregates all the news from all the different channels such as Reddit, Twitter, Cointelegraph, all the various websites, and all puts these into a very easy to understand dashboard so that you can easily follow the news about particular coins. So if you're trading particular coins, then you'll of course want to stay up to date with the news of that particular coin. So this is a really useful app to do that. They're also the sponsor for this event, so thank you to CryptoPanic for sponsoring the pizza and the drinks. It's definitely very nice of them. The second one is Delta app, and Delta is a cryptocurrency portfolio tracker. Who uses Blockfolio here? Yeah. Has anyone ever heard of Delta before? Okay, a few. All right, so they're a Belgian startup. I know them from my community, and they have been building this great app. A lot of people find it a lot easier to use than Blockfolio. So if you didn't know it, definitely give it a check out. So if there's any developers here in the audience and you want to learn about developing on Ethereum, then one of the resources that we really recommend is CryptoZombies. And CryptoZombies is a free interactive code school that teaches you how to write games on Ethereum. So is anyone familiar with CryptoKitties? Probably everyone. So if you want to be able to build your own CryptoKitties, you can go to this website and start learning how you can build this yourself completely for free. Then I want to take on the stage Han Kyul Park, and he's going to be talking about how cryptocurrencies are disrupting traditional finance. I think I've seen the slides, I think it's going to be a very interesting presentation that we all can learn something from. So please welcome him on the stage.
Alright, where's my slides?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I use my laptop?
Alright, apologies for that. I messed up his presentation, it's entirely my fault. But yeah, basically he wants to connect his laptop for a moment so that he can deliver a good presentation. So, who has heard about this event on Facebook, by the way? I think most people, because I posted it on Meetup and on Facebook, and I saw a lot of people RSVP'd on Facebook, so that's really cool. I didn't realize that Facebook was commonly used here. When I was organizing an event in Shanghai, basically I didn't know how to promote it, so I started messaging everyone on WeChat. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that for Korea because you guys all use the sites that we also use. So I heard they renovated the space. It's really nice. All right, I'm gonna hand over the mic to Han Kyul Park.
Hey, sorry for the slight delay. Today I'm gonna talk about a slightly more general topic. So I'm not here to market my own coin. No offense to Stella or Mobius. They have great coins. I'm going to talk more about blockchain in general, as well as cryptocurrencies. So I'm Han, and I founded a company called Paxdaq, and we're developing an exchange for cryptocurrency futures. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about just blockchain in general. So like every single blockchain talk, I'm going to start off by talking about the market cap. Right? Every single blockchain presentation starts off with a screenshot of coin market cap. So I'll go over this briefly. But, Bitcoin grew. Right? It grew from $16 billion to $160 billion. So 10 times over the past year. But we're always throwing these numbers at us, but what do those numbers actually mean? Like how much is $16 billion and how much is $160 billion? Well, if you look at it compared to countries, last year, when Bitcoin was only about $16 billion, and not a lot of people were talking about it compared to now, compared to other countries, it was ranked around 120. So between countries like Senegal and Botswana. Now how about compared to companies? Right, so these are some companies and their market caps. And all these companies have somewhere around $16 billion worth of, that's their valuation. You guys recognize any? Maybe Lowe's? But Bitcoin was around these numbers last year. But now it's $160 billion. Okay? Now it's reached up to countries like Hungary, and Iraq, and New Zealand, and Greece. Now we're comparing Bitcoin to OECD countries. I think that's pretty crazy. Now compared to companies. Now the market cap of Bitcoin is being compared to banks like Citigroup, HSBC, and IBM. Right? We've even overtaken banks like Goldman Sachs. And even people. Like the richest person on Earth is Jeff Bezos. Recently his personal wealth is somewhere around $100 billion. And so Bitcoin even beat Jeff Bezos. So, woohoo! So I'm from a data analytics background, so I like talking in visualizations and numbers. So this is what 10 times looks like. So the pink circle on the left is Bitcoin 1 year ago, and Bitcoin on the right, that's today. Now how about gold? So everybody talks about how Bitcoin is similar to gold, and how maybe one day that the market capitalization of gold, the market capitalization of Bitcoin will reach the market cap of gold. Bitcoin does have a lot of similarities with gold. Gold has been used as a currency for a very, very long time. And it's been pretty good, historically. But I think, and I'm sure a lot of you guys think, that Bitcoin is a lot better than gold, right? Gold is heavy, it's difficult to carry, it's difficult to divide, and it's also kind of hard to hide. I'm sure none of you want to do that, right? Right, so Bitcoin, at its current market capitalization, is 48 times the price of Bitcoin. But this number is actually kind of exaggerated. When you calculate the market cap of something like gold or a commodity, you kind of have to combine the physical and the non-physical assets. So if we shrink gold down to the actual physical gold that people trade, it's actually a lot smaller. It's actually only $170 billion. And again, Bitcoin does it again. The market cap of Bitcoin and physical gold is actually quite similar. But there's actually another commodity that I want to talk about, other than gold and Bitcoin. It's sometimes called black gold, oil. And actually, the market capitalization of physical oil is actually 10 times larger than the physical market capitalization of gold. The total market cap of all metals in the commodities markets don't even make up half the value of oil. So why is that? I mean, as you can see, there's Bitcoin, there's physical gold, and then there's physical oil, which is 10 times larger. Why do people buy oil 10 times more than gold? It's because oil is versatile, right? I mean, everyone knows that oil is used to power cars, ships, airplanes, but it's also used to make things. Like, most of the things in this room come from oil. So what about Bitcoin? Or cryptocurrencies in general? Or going one step further, what about decentralized ledger technologies? Right? I believe that the fundamental invention that Bitcoin brought and got everybody excited is this concept of decentralized ledger technologies. And from that core commodity, or that core concept, people all over the world are inventing things and creating things. Things like Stellar, things like Mobius, ICOs, prediction markets, decentralized organizations, and stores of information, like IPFS and storage and whatnot. Maybe they're not that great. Maybe they're not all that viable. But a lot of experimentation is going on around the world. Similarly to oil, Bitcoin is an extremely, extremely versatile concept. And so when people come and ask me, is Bitcoin kind of like digital gold? I'll be like, no. It's like digital oil. It's scarce, it's versatile, and it's not defined by how it looks, but how it's used. If oil is the catalyst for the development of the industrial age, I think that DLT will be the catalyst for the information age. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people try new things, and a lot of them seem kind of illegal, but are they valuable? I think that's the real question. right? But what is the actual value of DLT? We see a lot of people experimenting with different things, but are they actually valuable? I think we look to history and other exponentially changing technologies to see if DLT is actually worth anything. But I believe that DLT technology drastically reduces a very fundamental cost in doing business. The printing press decreased cost of spreading ideas. That was put on steroids with internet and the media. The development of the scientific method reduced the cost of spreading ideas and checking what's right and wrong. Legal systems reduced the cost of social and economic conflict. And democracy, another social technology, reduces the cost of a catastrophic dictator. All these technologies reduce a very specific cost. They reduce the cost of living together. Right? That sounds kind of funny, right? Like, why is it expensive for people to live together? It's because we don't trust each other. We can't. I don't know what you're thinking, right? Another way to put this is all these technologies, they decrease the cost of distrusting one another, and they increase trust in society. Right. So historically, when two people come together and they meet and they say, I'm a nice guy, and you wanna, and he doesn't look very nice, right? Maybe he has like a huge beard and like a scar, but you need some food or you need some help, like building a house or something. Like, what do you say? You say, prove it. Prove to me that you're a nice guy and that you'll play by the rules. And then he'll say, I'm a nice guy, right? But how do you believe that? Talk is always cheap. And so you have to prove that you're trustworthy. And so these are some examples of how we learn to trust each other, right? And I use the word trust protocols because Bitcoin also uses the word trust protocols a lot. And protocols may sound difficult, but it's actually just a set of rules for a specific purpose, right? Now religion, I think that's always a very interesting trust protocol that's been around for a very long time. And I've divided this graph. You can look at it further or take pictures. I don't think I can go through it, in too much depth. But religion is a trust protocol, right? I wrote proof of ethics, right? How do you prove that someone is nice? Any ideas? How do you prove someone is nice or is ethical through religion? You tell them to come to church every week. Every single week, you see someone at church, and you see they follow the Bible, and they listen to the pastor, then you know that that person is a nice guy, right? Then there's customs, right? I wrote POSK. POSK is proof of South Korea. South Korea is a country at war, and there's North Koreans, supposedly, there's North Koreans spying on us everywhere. How do you prove someone is a South Korean and not a North Korean spy? It's customs, it's culture, it's how we speak. And then there's laws. There's a scientific method created by, starting from Descartes to Karl Popper and etc. And then there's POW and POS and hashgraph and all these DLT-related technologies. These trust protocols you can divide them into three different factors. You can divide these trust protocols into the person that makes the rules, the person that decides if these rules are followed, and there's a person that enforces the rules and sees if people, hits them on the head if they don't follow the protocol. This is actually, in legal terms, there's some fancy words, but I made it a bit easier. But I think that could be applied to any kind of trust protocol, right? Who creates the rules for religion? A religious leader, right? And then who decides whether these rules are being correctly followed or not? Again, the religious leader. And then what happens if you don't follow the rule? You get ostracized or kicked out, or something on the form. And so there's different ways that I think you could frame all these trust protocols, but I think this is a good way to look at how they're created and how they're enforced. And then after that, we have to see whether they're good at what they're intended to do, which is to promote trust, right? So one of the key indicators of performance of how trust is kept, I think, is centralization. Right? How centralized is this concept? How decentralized is this concept? How anti-fragile is it? How easily is it broken? How easily is it forked? How much integrity does this protocol have? And I think Bitcoin and proof of work, it's written in code, right? So you can't fiddle with it. That's why it's much more decentralized and has much more integrity than previous protocols. And then there's transaction speeds. So compared to law and the scientific method, religion and customs is actually a lot faster. Once you're inside this trust protocol, and you're inside this church gathering, then it's very, very quick. You can make quick transactions and you can trust the person next to you. It's very, very easy to do that. It may not be accurate, but it's much faster than the law or peer reviews, right? Those take years. And then we go over to trust accuracy. So how accurately are these rules being enforced? And obviously, like societal norms and things like that, they can't be accurate. They're ever changing. And so one of the ways that society has thought of to make these rules more accurate is by creating laws and by creating a body of scientific literature. But with regards to centralization, transaction speed, and trust accuracy, I don't think there's been any technology that's been as performant as DLC technologies. Right, so let me come back to Bitcoin and oil a bit. As we previously stated, oil and Bitcoin are very versatile. They can be used for like hundreds of things, and hence they're valuable. Oil is very versatile, but as you can see, this is how oil is exported around the world. It's extremely centralized. Once a crucial asset of the economy is controlled by a few, it can be manipulated and abused, and everybody knows about it. The good thing about blockchain technology is that people know the issues of centralization. And people all around the world are creating these new tokens and are deliberately architecting them to make them more equal and more decentralized. I think that's fantastic. Right. So now that we have this digital oil, one of the first inventions that people have been really latching onto are ICOs. Right? Everybody's doing them these days. I also did one last year. I was the CEO of a coin called Bosscoin. I don't know if some of you guys may know it or may not know it. It was the first ICO in South Korea. And one of the most difficult things to do when architecting Bosscoin was seeing whether it was a security or not. So I mean, some people might know like the legal definition of security and the financial definition of security, but it's actually really difficult to not be labeled as security when you're doing an ICO. If it has like a POS consensus algorithm and you have staking and you get returns, that's very similar to dividends. So you might be under the radar of the SEC. If you sell to more than like 100 people that aren't accredited investors and super rich, it's also a public offering. So that's also a security. And then if the price fluctuates, or if people expect the price to fluctuate, even that is considered a security. And so people like come back to the SEC and say, you're calling everything a security. Why? Right? But the SEC has a very, very broad definition of security. And I want to talk briefly about the reason why that might happen. Trust protocols, just like any other protocol, have value as they grow. The more people involved in the network, the more valuable it is. And so a lot of the times, trust protocols step on each other's toes, right? Religion used to be, it used to explain everything. It used to explain science. It used to explain law. And then as time progresses, we develop better systems to promote trust, to decide what's true or not. And so it's only natural that these protocols always have to fight with each other, right? So the SEC has a really, really big scope of what a security is. So let's economically see how big it actually is. It's actually a $73 trillion market. And that's 456 times larger than Bitcoin. As you can see, the blue dot here on the right, that's Bitcoin. And the global stock market is 400 times larger. And the next natural step would be global money supply. Global money supply is slightly larger. It's $90 trillion. So that's also pretty huge. So the SEC wants to regulate, wants to control, wants to be the rule keeper for this huge market, which is almost the size as the global money supply. But these numbers are actually similar to one more thing. They're actually similar to the total GDP of the world as well, $75 trillion. So this is just plain economics. In economics, people usually say the money supply and the stock market valuation and the GDP, they say they're similar. Because they're just different ways of looking at the same thing, of how much value is being created in the economy. And so the SEC says, we'll take that. We'll take the stock market. And then central banks, they say, we'll take that one. We'll take this pie. And they take the money supply. But then there's also derivatives. And that's a $1.2 quadrillion market. And then, obviously, no one's going to leave that one alone, right? So the CFTC comes along and says, oh, that one's ours. So for stock markets, currencies, and derivatives, each class has someone that makes the rules, that decides if the rules are followed, and then enforces them as well. But I want to ask, are they performant? Are they centralized? Are they fast? Are they accurate? Are they scientific? As I said before, trust protocols are always stepping on each other's toes. Religion versus science. Customs versus legal systems. Financial industries versus DLT. And historically, each time these protocols stepped on each other's toes, there was conflict. But then, there was technology. Trust protocols right now might have poor performance, but I think in the end of the day, they'll win. And everybody else will change their purpose, or change their scope, or maybe disappear. So I want to go back to the original question. How are cryptocurrencies disrupting traditional finance? So this is my prediction. Bitcoin kind of copied gold, right? But Bitcoin is better than that, so we're going to skip it. So there's the blue dot here, and the green one over there is gold, so we're going to skip that one. And then there's oil, which is the yellow one. We can probably tokenize that through ERC tokens. And then comes securities, right? And as Chief Clayton says, all ICOs are securities. And I think he's probably right. But the SEC has a bit of a UX problem. If everybody in the whole world is doing ICOs, how on earth are they going to stop everybody from tokenizing their businesses? And then comes derivatives. Now, for this market, which I'm also involved in, this is kind of new, but there's also been a lot of efforts to tokenize and apply DLT technology to the derivatives markets. Right? So there's projects like Evermart, DYDX, and Paxdaq, which is us, that are building derivatives with cryptocurrencies. And I think decentralization of these technologies can make it have better access, we can make it more transparent, and even more efficient. And maybe this bubble is too big. Maybe it'll even shrink. And then finally, I think it's going to be sovereign currencies. They're probably going to put up the hardest fight. But I believe in innovation. I believe people are going to be creative and eventually design a better currency. Something like a zero inflation coin, where there's no inflation. This would mean that the money supply increases at the same rate of the GDP growth. I don't know how they're going to do that. Sounds pretty difficult, but maybe it's possible. It would be cheap to trade. No one could censor your transactions, and you would have privacy. If you were able to create that kind of coin, why would you use the dollar? So again, coming back to the original question, how are cryptocurrencies disrupting traditional finance? These newly developed trust protocols may not be as good as traditional protocols just yet, but I think they will be. And when they are, the previous traditional protocols can either change their scope or be, and as Mark Andreessen famously said, software is eating the world. So I think software is not only going to eat the traditional financial world, it's going to eat the complete world, and it's going to use a spoon. It's going to use DLT technology as a spoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Woodbreeze, give him a round of applause again. Right, so let me... Fabian. This is not my laptop, so I don't have the slides. Password. One question in the meantime I get him. Who here knows Asian Boss? It's a YouTube channel here from South Korea. And they pose questions about different topics, such as... one second. Fabian! Fabian! Alright. So Asian Boss was here tonight to film some of the event and make some shots for their videos, because what they're doing is they're making a video next on cryptocurrencies and how cryptocurrencies and what kind of status cryptocurrencies have in South Korea, and why there is so much hype around cryptocurrencies in South Korea compared to most other countries. As many of you probably know, South Korea has one of the most volume in the world. And so basically what I wanted to ask you guys is, if you're interested in sharing your opinion with Asian Boss and being one of their videos, come talk to me afterwards and I'll put you in touch with them. So basically they are interviewing people to talk and share their opinion about cryptocurrencies. So they have 650,000 subscribers. So if that's maybe a good avenue to share your opinion or maybe potentially promote your own thing, like have your name attached to that video, definitely come and chat with me. Their videos are really good and high quality. So next I'm going to invite up to the stage Cyrus from Mobius. And Mobius recently did an ICO and raised $39 million in that ICO. And they used Stellar to do that particular ICO. Cyrus is going to explain a little bit about what their product is about, but also is going to share about his learnings, what went wrong during the ICO, what went correctly during the ICO, and potentially you can learn something from it. Afterwards, we're going to have a panel. So for the entrepreneurs in the space, we're going to be talking about potential opportunities for entrepreneurs to enter this market and start your own company around cryptocurrencies. So if you're interested in that, definitely stay around. And I'm going to invite up Cyrus to the stage right now. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Dylan, and I'm really happy to be here. It's my third time in Seoul, and every time I go to a crypto-minded event, the audiences just get bigger and more engaged, specifically with all of the latest developments in the blockchain space. So Mobius, we actually got in this space last year, and in fact have been in the blockchain space actually pretty much by accident since late 2011 and 2012 when I first learned about Bitcoin. And it's been an amazing journey simply because of the proliferation of new tech, but there's still a lot that needs to be improved. So today I'll talk about a couple of things. One is a high-level overview of where I see the entire ICO market going and trends that I noticed in 2018 and moving forward in that space. And two, talking a little bit more about our technology and product that developers are actually using now with Mobius. So, just to set the tone, I think 2018, I think there's actually going to be a tremendous difficulty for other projects just leveraging this form of crowdfunding. For us, the $39 million is actually counted as revenue, and we conducted it outside of US airspace primarily because for most startups in the United States that have this much revenue, you basically get taxed an enormous amount. Federal, state, and government tax goes all the way up to 60%, and you just don't have a competitive advantage against monoliths like Google or Apple that can just double Dutch their system, into Europe and save a lot. So we'll talk a little bit about that and also the tech. So a little bit about our mission here. Mobius, we're just really trying to help connect people and devices to the blockchain economy. And why is it an economy? Well, the purchasing power for early adopters of Bitcoin, Ethereum, a lot of these cryptocurrencies, right now they're just being held onto. But we think eventually people want to actually realize a lot of their gains in cryptocurrencies and actually start buying and spending it on tangible goods and products and services. But there needs to be a really easy way, a fast way, and a secure way to actually do that. And when we first developed Mobius, that's kind of how we wanted to help contribute to the ecosystem. So, let's go to presentation mode.
Does it not work?
Yeah.
Oh, you're at the last slide.
Right here. It went out.
You're at the last slide.
Oh, it's on the last slide. Okay. Cool. So a little bit about the team. All the co-founders met at Stanford. I graduated there with honors. David actually went there. He did his computer science degree. He dropped out of his master's and went to Harvard Law, which is actually really good because if you think of the blockchain space as it is today, it's actually the perfect confluence of where technology really meets law, especially with what's going on in the ICO space. I actually think 2018 is when the SEC will definitely step in and things will be extremely less nebulous as they are now. And I think a lot of the tokens out there don't have a real strong use case other than just being purely speculative assets. So another trend that I noticed, that I do predict in 2018, and actually International Business Times reached out to me. Maybe if I have time, I'll write a piece about this. But one of the other trends I see in 2018 moving forward is that there's going to be a lot of delistings of tokens which simply don't have any real utility or product use case. And we've already seen that quite recently with Bittrex for moving metal and other tokens, and you've seen precipitous price drops after that fact. And I think that's only going to continue to accelerate in 2018. And I'm actually quite excited about that because it actually clears up a lot of the market, and it actually the capital could actually be reabsorbed into products that are actually producing real things for the blockchain economy. So, and lastly, Monis. Actually, Monis, also a good friend of David and I from Stanford. He actually dropped out of his PhD in computational mathematical engineering. He worked under Paul Milgram, who is pretty much the preeminent auction theorist. So Mobius does a lot of applied math and game theory, and he was pretty instrumental in developing a lot of the mathematics that's sitting on top of our protocol for what we're doing with Mobius. So just press mentions. I don't know why this is in here. It just somehow it made it in here, but it actually helps bring more attention to like the ICO space. So it hit a pretty, big fever pitch. I think by fall 2017, and afterwards, a lot of people were saying, okay, this is pretty much it. The enthusiasm is pretty much dampened. Perhaps after, say, QuantStamp's ICO, a lot of people in the Valley are saying this is probably the last one, the last hurrah for the market, because people are just growing very, very tired and pessimistic about ICOs in general. So I think it was actually quite a shock when we were, and actually it was quite surprising to us when Mobius went viral, and we were able to sell $39 million and have $39 million in revenue for our product as early as January of last month, actually. And in part of that virality was some of the points that have gone pretty much unnoticed until then. So like some people label us as being pretty contrarian because when I was at New York FinTech Week back in August, I had certain statements about Ethereum, and primarily so one of its main core innovations for Ethereum, what I do like is you have unbound expressivity. You can just write a lot of things with smart contracts there. But if you dig deeper into it, it's too slow, it's too insecure, and it's too expensive to actually carry out actual consumer-facing applications. And we see this all too well, even with what game? CryptoKitties. CryptoKitties, a toy application, brought the entire Ethereum network to a crawl. So it really tells you how early we are in this space. And I made the comparison to MySpace. So I do think Ethereum has those scalability issues. There are maximalists that actually think they can develop the protocol in time. But as an early adopter of Ethereum, it's actually hard to say this, but I think there will be other emergent protocols that actually pick up where it is left. Ethereum is dropping the ball and actually benefit from positive network effects from that. So we early actually built on ERC20 protocol, but we noticed that those were fundamental limitations. So we decided to actually build on top of SCP because, namely, for what we were trying to accomplish, connect consumer-facing applications and live data streams to blockchain and smart contracting capabilities, it actually made sense because if you write even the most efficient smart contract on Ethereum, actually one of my friends at Slice, who's director of engineering, who's playing around with it, I was like, go ahead, play around with it, let me know what you think. He's like, yeah, we could literally bankrupt our own startup if I write a pretty expressive smart contract, because the transactions, the costs could just add up like crazy, right? It's like over $1 or more for a simple transaction. Imagine using your favorite social media app, like Twitter, KakaoTalk right now, and you press a like button or you say hi. And imagine KakaoTalk or Twitter charges you $1, $1.50, depending on network congestion every time you did that. Would you continue to use that social network? Some people will pay premiums for that, I don't know. But I think most people wouldn't. I mean, some people pay a lot for CryptoKitties. But yeah, I don't think it's a long-term thing. So when we built Mobius, we said, well, the protocol we're building on top of just has to be exponentially cheaper than it is today. And transaction speeds actually have to be, fairly robust. So TPS is around over 1,000, and it's not a testnet, it's actually live. And transaction costs are exponentially cheaper than Ethereum, as you see today. For every transaction on Ethereum, guess how much you pay? I mean, on the time of the day, it really ranges. It's anywhere from 30 cents. That's last year when I was checking, so my number's out of date. But lately I saw it going over $1, closer to $2. And then on top of that, you just have security issues. countless security issues because they're Turing complete. So there's a lot of attack surface. So that's one of the reasons why we decided to build on Stellar. And I think a lot of those key points actually were noted. And that's really what gained a lot of virality when we actually ended up closing our sale and retaining this much revenue. So yeah, going back to the problem, to make sense of what we're doing with our ICO, it just didn't make sense to build it on ERC20. Because you see 99% of tokens out there are ERC20. Even ones that are claiming they're not. EOS is an ERC20 token. There's so many instances of this. So there are even forks of Ethereum, that are saying they're completely different. You can see some of those examples in China. I won't name the coins, but you probably have heard of them. They're very nice and popular today. And so that's why we decided to build on top of SCP, because we really wanted a really inexpensive way, a very fast way, and a very secure way to connect this data and consumer-facing applications to blockchain. So when we were definitely starting to put this together, we put in a few patent submissions for our PSOP, which basically it's not your traditional proof of stake because there's no economic incentive for our proof of stake local protocol. Basically, what it does is you try to apply a decentralization to a couple of things, like when you have a completely trustless environment. So if you're at Oracle, say you're like an RFID chip on insulin on a truck, and you're trying to basically figure out the supply chain and make sure the insulin, which is really temperature sensitive, doesn't fall below a certain temperature range, or gets too hot and denatures the protein and someone gets really sick using the insulin. So how do you do this? Well, you could rely on the supply chain provider and just trust them. So that's a single failure point, right? Or you could have a trustless system that's not a single database, not a single point of failure, right? Reporting this, so that RFID chip could actually be reporting not only the time and location and temperature to the blockchain, but also be reporting it to a smart contracting capability with a very simple conditional statement or conditional function that just says, if temperature drops below this or goes above this, then execute this action. Or if it gets too hot, then it's probably not good medicine anymore. And you can identify through a distributed ledger where and when that happened without relying on a specific party or source for truth. You can rely on multiple sources. And that's where we thought really critically about how you can actually use the token in this way, not for an economic incentive, but actually for an economic penalty. So the Oracle would actually have to stake the token, Mobi, when reporting. And this would prohibit any kind of malactors or spam bots from actually putting malicious or bad data into the data marketplace. And so this kind of just illustrates the point a little bit further. So our earliest MVP was sort of like, as I was going back, we wanted to make it really cheap, easy, fast, and secure for any developers to connect anything to blockchain-based payments and smart contracting capabilities. So our earliest MVP was sort of like Stripe for blockchain, right? Making it really, really easy for people to actually connect their existing business or even a data stream to blockchain and just configuring it to a way that they see fit. So today, that can probably just be games. And actually, when Jed McCaleb, he was actually our first. He was actually the first person to back us. He actually predicted hey, this is probably something that gamers will really love because they're actually some of the earliest blockchain developers. And we're like, yeah, that might be the case because when we started playing around with blockchain, we were trying to build some of our own games. And so that's where it is today, and there are more serious applications being built on top of it. So just a little bit of overview of how this would actually work in terms of using Mobius as part of the PSOP would be Well, you'd have an oracle, and it would extract real-world data, and it would actually fetch the data from some said source, like the example I gave with, insulin on a supply chain from, manufacturing facility to some consumer in a medical clinic or at home. And then it would actually send it back to a smart contract, which would then process and evaluate it, and then there'd be a resolution whether or not the data checks out or it's invalidated somehow. And if it's invalidated, then it gets then this is where decentralization was solved. An even bigger problem with the Oracle space that currently isn't addressed by any other tokens or protocols is how could you actually have a arbitration protocol that is completely decentralized, where the consensus is built on the chain. So basically, in that case, you'd have a decentralized arbitration consensus protocol, which would actually make sense because you're using a federated system. So basically, you'll have other oracles cross-checking the validity of data of other oracles, and the security would actually increase with more oracles added to the system. So just giving it a little bit more life here. So this just reiterates basically what I'm saying. So you could have supply chain data being connected through PSOP using Mobius to some kind of smart contract, or it could simply also be facilitating payments, which we already have built out integrations for Stellar and actually Ethereum and ERC20. And we just were too slow in development and connecting Bitcoin, but we figured, if people actually wanted to have really fast, settlement times, they might just use Stellar. And for popularity's sake, we put in ERC20 tokens too. So going back into the ICO, so yeah, we were pretty surprised by the amount of revenue that came in. So we had $39 million. That was our actual hard cap. My co-founder was more aggressive, and so our advisors, they wanted to put it at 100 million. In fact, the amount of excess capital that we got actually surpassed 100 million. We were easily sending tens of millions of dollars back every couple of days. And for us, that was something that was a very deliberate choice because we actually didn't need that much money to complete what we were trying to do. I actually think something like this will be harder moving forward in 2018. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, I'm still a little sick. I was here a few weeks ago in Seoul and it was like -13. So I actually literally dressed for warmer weather from California. So thank you. So I actually think doing an ICO will be a lot more difficult in 2018 just because the environment has changed dramatically. Not only do I see regulation coming in, which would actually limit the speed of this, but I think that's a very positive thing because it'll protect a lot of mainstream investors, which is sorely needed. And I think part of it is also selective treatment from self-proclaimed YouTube experts who literally come out of nowhere to evangelize certain products that they may or may not have undisclosed private secret dealings with in the pre-sale. So I think this is sorely needed in this space, and I think it will be a positive development to protect consumers. And I think there'll be a lower frequency of ICOs that hit these targets. They may increase over time as the value of the tokens actually increase over time. So I do think, in the next couple of years, you'll see a much larger rise, possibly by the end of 2018. We're going through a correction period. So I actually do see growing number of things called a reverse ICO. Does anyone know what a reverse ICO is? So that's basically when you have a pre-existing company or product like Kodak or Kik or Overstock.com saying, hey, guess what? We want to do an ICO too. So it's like kind of the Me Too kind of thing. Like for Kodak, it doesn't really make sense. So what are you going to do? Use the Kodak token to take pictures? I'm not really sure. So I think there's going to be a lot of these gratuitous reverse ICOs simply as a last-ditch effort to add more funding for their project that otherwise may or may not have gotten a traditional venture capital funding. Or maybe they're just doing it because they don't want to lose out any more equity. So that's what I see going on. And yeah, I actually did want to thank some of our major token purchasers. So, you know, part of that was like Walton Chain, who also does a lot of hardware manufacturing. So we are really interested in moving forward with them and integrating some of our blockchain tech into their hardware devices, which they're really domain experts in, and also Camp One, who we were completely taken aback from because they're one of the earliest investors in Ripple, and we're their second investment because they actually bought our equity. So we actually sold equity. This isn't important. So, well, actually it is. I actually see too many ICOs talking about their Telegram numbers, which to me doesn't make any sense at all. Because a lot of the Telegram groups that I've noticed have a lot of bots from Russia. So I think it's a very superficial characteristic for most ICOs to talk about this. So that's why one of the reasons why I included this slide is that people don't measure the actual roadmap, or GitHub, or product development. Instead, I see too many ICOs talking about how big and huge their Telegram groups are. And for me, it's usually a dubious sign because when I go in there, you know, it's really just feeding the speculative hype, which I do see correcting very soon. In fact, it has corrected quite a bit. But that said, what we do care about is actually cultivating our developer community. And what we do notice very early on is that we have a very engaged pool of developers who are building tangible apps now in our App Store, which we're really surprised. Someone in our community said, hey, when I looked up the App Store, you guys are already #1 Google search result. And we're just like, oh, that's really cool. And we actually are really surprised by what people are actually building with Mobius. Some of the things we did not expect, like someone connected an anti-spam email service with Mobius so you can get paid in crypto by reading your spam, and others have made games. So, yeah, and just the advisory board, we really want to thank Jed. He was actually our earliest backer and serves as our technical advisor. And he was so kind. He actually, when David and I used to work out of Starbucks, Jed actually gave us space in the Stellar office. So thanks, Jed, and thanks, Ella. I use your desk when you're not there. And also Jack Lee, founding managing partner at Foxconn Technology Ventures. I think the TVs are some over here in the back are endorsed by Foxconn, and you know, I guess they're somewhat known for helping put together Apple products. Thanks, Jack. And also Chandler, they all were very supportive and purchased tokens. Oh, and Jackson Palmer, really good friend and advisor as well, and long-time friend from the blockchain community. He was the creator of Dogecoin. And yeah, you guys can follow us all today. We do have a small cacao talk, but this is our Telegram too. Thank you guys.
All right, thank you so much. So right now, I would like to invite on stage Erica, Han Kyul Park, and Howard Park. Howard Park is from Gopax, and Erica runs a YouTube channel called KryptoSeoul. You may have heard of it before. And for the entrepreneurs in this audience, we basically want to ask you, like, if you're interested in getting into this space as a potential entrepreneur, what do you think the opportunities are? We will have to put these on stage, because otherwise we're facing you with our backs, which is not very nice. Alright, so Han Park is from Gopax, Han Kyul Park, you have just seen these from Paxdaq, and Erica from KryptoSeoul. And so, basically I've prepared a few questions for them around entrepreneurship in this space, which I happen to call cryptopreneurship. I think that's a nice one to play on it. And basically I want to give you guys the opportunities to ask them questions as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll run over to you with the mic. And basically have the possibility to ask them a question about maybe your idea of your startup. So let me start with a question first. So what do you think is the biggest problem holding up the crypto adoption at the moment? Maybe.
Big hurdle. I think it's quite intimidating and scary, like especially big media. When they first heard about it, and when they ask what it's about, and people talk about all the illegal cases of how these technologies are being used, I think that really scares away people, and the media did quite a good job scaring, a lot of very entrepreneurial people away. But I'm also optimistic, because I think recently the media is also thinking a bit more heavily, thinking maybe once or twice a bit more, and hopefully that should improve into the future as well.
Well, I think from the technological perspective it would be scalability, because there is still a very real issue with Bitcoin and Ethereum, main components of the cryptocurrency space. It definitely is an issue. With Stellar, we have less of that problem, but still there are many ways to work with it. But other technological aspects, I think we can work out. But for scalability, I think we haven't found the one golden solution that solves all problems. Much research is still going on there. The other, I think, just two things I want to mention. The other is that right now people are focusing much still on the business model per se of Bitcoin, where it's a currency, it's a cryptocurrency we call it, and how it can be used like money. But then blockchain technology, well, it always is involved with cryptocurrency, but then it has to prove its own utility, as in like, we can have internet, but just having internet doesn't provide any value. You have to, when we came up with email and social media and all kinds of different things, now we can pretty much live without, we cannot live without internet. And for blockchain cryptocurrency ecosystem, I don't think we have to come up with like a killer utility just yet.
I think there are two factors. Mostly, I think first one in Korean market, I think the government regulation is kind of prohibiting a lot of the large corporations and banks to participate. And right now, I'm sure the Korean market is under like a gray area in terms of government regulations. And I think banks and like Chaebol, for example, like the large corporations are kind of seeing like which one is going to step forward to take the bullet, right? So I think that's prohibiting the whole market to be involved, adopting blockchain technology. And number two, I think the lack of education. I think the lack of formal education that universities and accredited institutions are adopting. I mean, there's no actual textbook like that's been written officially. So I think that are the two factors that kind of hinder blockchain technology adoption.
So if you would translate those problems that stop adoption of cryptocurrencies into an actual opportunity for an entrepreneur, like a gap that you see, what would you say to the audience is like an interesting challenge to take on for an entrepreneur in this space to help the adoption?
Well, I think one of the most valuable things that the cryptocurrency Bitcoin needs is neutrality. I think perhaps fewer people showing their coins and having a very unbiased view on what they think a certain technology is like. I think neutrality is extremely valuable. Maybe if there's some kind of way to reward that in a fair and productive manner, I think that would be a fantastic project to work on.
I think one thing we need to focus on is, so I'm going back to what I just said, that we're too tied up with how things have been dealt in this cryptocurrency, cryptoeconomics and everything. We really need to look at, so blockchain has very peculiar characteristics to it, and you can do something very cool with it. People are still discovering what you can do with it. But we need to look beyond just the finance of it, just looking at it as an asset or just something that has monetary value. But then one thing about Bitcoin or Ethereum is trustless. And for Stellar, it's not exactly trustless, but it resembles how trust works in the real world and kind of emulates that in technology and is a very unique consensus model. And there are very unique characteristics to this blockchain technology that can be useful for something, and that's what we need to focus on rather than just replicating what other cryptocurrencies have been doing for the past 4, 5, 6 years.
So if I have to answer my own question from a more financial perspective, I personally think that cryptocurrencies and blockchain in general still has a very horrendous UX. For example, my dad, he worked in IT for the past 30 years, and it took him about a day or two to figure out how he was actually going to create a wallet for his cryptocurrencies. And then when he found out that he created a wallet, but he couldn't transfer Bitcoin to my Ether wallet, then he was like, well, then what do I do? Like, in general, like the UX is pretty bad. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs there to potentially create better wallets that are easier, safer to use. For example, what if you lose your private key? Can someone think of a way to restore private keys safely so that other people cannot hack your private key? Is there a nice middle ground to be found there? That's at least the advice I would give to entrepreneurs that want to get into this space.
Yeah, so kind of following up on what Dylan said, I think the lack of accessibility and familiarity. I think like the user experience also that kind of relates to it. But I mean, my point is more focused on like lack of information, like reliable information, and like the platform to kind of take in all the sources, like the legitimate sources from the blockchain world. And I think the lack of platform, and I think that could be a really niche market for a lot of entrepreneurs to kind of target on. And I think also community building is also being very unstructured at the moment. I think it's the essence of blockchain and blockchain community. So those two areas I think that can be worked on by entrepreneurs, and that's what I'm working on right now. So yeah.
Great. So you are all cryptopreneurs. That's what I call them. What is your biggest hurdle, or like what is the most difficult thing to deal with as a cryptopreneur in this space? Is it regulation, or is it adoption, or is it people not understanding how things are done, like losing their funds, etc.? What, in your opinion, is the most difficult thing to deal with as a cryptopreneur?
I think every blockchain startup probably deals with this issue, and it's probably going to be finding other cryptopreneurs. Finding other blockchain developers is very difficult, and I'm sure Gopax has a similar problem, and I'm sure like Coin1, like Poloniex, I'm sure every single exchange is looking for blockchain developers. And so I would like a lot more people to give up their day job and jump into blockchain. I'd love that to happen, and I'd love to work with you guys.
Well, Gopax has been operating for about 3 months now, and the company itself has been around for about 3 years. And surprisingly, you would imagine that there's so much talk about cryptocurrency, even on just normal news outlets and media and everything. But the funny thing is, the hardest thing is to get exposure, to get your story out to what we want to talk about, blockchain and cryptocurrency, what we think of it, what we see value in it. But to have that exposed to the general public is actually the hardest thing ever. Because people see that, oh, Bitcoin used to be, I don't know, we can get one pizza for 10,000 Bitcoins. But then now, it's this lightning channel and everything. That's what kind of people want to see, how much it's worth, how much money people have made. And that doesn't say anything about blockchain at all. And we want to get the story out, and people are there's too much technology, too much detail into all this jargon and everything. And also very difficult economic concepts. I still don't really understand how Steam works, that kind of thing. Steam dollar, Steam power, just that kind of thing. And also SCP, the Professor Cyrus created this very ingenious protocol. It's a lot to handle. But we want to get the story out and people understand why this is meaningful and why this is valuable. And the funny thing is, all this news and all this talk about blockchain, everybody's talking about cryptocurrency, everybody knows Bitcoin. We still haven't got enough information out. Right.
I'm glad I didn't pay Bitcoin for the pizza, by the way. I was able to, but I didn't do it.
So I agree wholeheartedly with Han Kyul on the lack of developer, lack of personnel in this area, and that's the biggest hurdle. And I'm actually going to person by person and trying to get them involved in the industry. So that's how hard it is. And I think there's not even a platform for HR personnel and to get job description and get people involved to even put the resume. So I think that's the most biggest hurdle. And also one of the things that there's no sunbase, there's no precedence of entrepreneurs in the crypto world. So there's no way to kind of look up to. I mean, because we're the pioneers, I guess, the first generation, I guess, and that really makes it difficult to find the wise decision to make the right decision in this space because it's an open, very new industry.
All right, so now I want to give you guys the opportunity to ask any question you may have. So who here has their own startup in the crypto space? You would like to ask a question, right?
I heard, Korea takes about less than 15% for Bitcoin transaction market. But for the altcoin, other coins except the Bitcoin, the transaction volume in Korea takes about more than 50%. It's enormous. So why that happens? What is just idea or thought why that happens in Korea? Blockchain and the cryptocurrency is booming. In every country, but the transaction volume in Korea is enormously, huge. Why that happens?
So to summarize the question, why has Korea one of the most volumes in the world when it comes to cryptocurrency? Maybe the person working at the exchange is able to actually answer that.
I don't think there is a politically correct answer to this question. But I'll be honest. It has a lot to do with the culture. Because so the cryptocurrency investment in the United States and Europe, and you will see that people there when they invest, what do they think they're investing in? They're thinking they're investing in companies, startups. They have this new technology like Snapchat or Twitter, in its early stage, or Instagram, that kind of thing. But in Korea, when they're investing in cryptocurrency, what do they think they're investing in? To make a quick money at the shortest time, at the highest rate possible. And I want to earn more than this guy or that guy. And that guy made $10 million, I'm going to make $50 million. Whatnot. They're very aggressive. And it actually is, you can look at the statistics in the stock market of Korea, has a certain market cap and it ranks in a certain position in the world. And the derivatives market in Korea is actually way higher than the stock market cap. This derivatives market, you would know, that is you don't have as much money to play with, but then you can play much more riskier, more tricky games for higher gains, higher risk. And Koreans have, higher propensity for that. So I think that kind of buys into the cryptocurrency market with this huge volatility, great opportunity, and that I think that just suits the current taste.
Do you guys have anything to add to that? Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not an exchange person, but I kind of know the Korean mentality a little bit because I'm a Korean, of course, but maybe there's like also I agree with Howard on that, the pump and dump, that kind of thing, but, and also, I think Koreans, once they get involved in a certain field, I think we, I don't know, tend to kind of delve into it and kind of study other points as well, other projects that are interesting. So I think it's not only about Bitcoin, it's also learning about other projects that can be promising. So I think the passion to learn, passion to kind of dive into new projects, I think that kind of facilitated the diverse interest and other points, other projects. And I think right now the Korean sentiment is not only focusing on the price speculation, not only the investment side, but I think also in the long-term vision of the coin. I think that community is growing day by day. So I can feel that, and I think I'm very positive about it. But I think that positive factor can play a role.
I'll give you the opportunity to answer the next question.
Actually, I don't work for the crypto, the startup, but I just came here to have more idea about, to understand what's going on. And then I have a very silly question. I don't know whether this is relevant here or not. Okay, so I moved to Korea. I started my own company, which is give the tours for the foreigner or anyone who wants to see the Korean, etc. So I believe that cryptocurrency is just such a good way for me to earn money instead of the actual physical money. So for example, last couple of weeks I used to work for Intel while they were in the Olympic age of fixers. So so basically only old age we used to sell the product as a physical goods. As a Korea, maybe used to sell the phone or television or something. But these days actually I can sell my times and the knowledge is what I'm having. So if I start the businesses or if I start to accept the cryptocurrency on behalf of my tour program here in Korea, you think is something interesting for the people who come to Korea, kind of try the tour or the new product, or is it too early to start something like that, or too risky, or is it a smart move for me to have that, like marketing catchy praise to do that? Just I want to have a general background here.
Okay, so if I'm allowed to summarize that question, I think what you're asking mostly is it as a business a good idea or a bad idea to accept cryptocurrencies? And if it is a good idea, do you think it will boost business? Is that correct?
And the statement today, is it too early or is it too late?
Right, okay.
I think it's pretty easy to put a cryptocurrency payment module onto any kind of e-commerce or service site. So I think it's never too late. I think it's probably a good idea to put it on, not only to get comfortable with technology yourself, but also to spread these kinds of ideas to other people that might not easily be able to learn about this kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's a good idea.
If I may ask your question, answer your question as well. I think yes. It might make it easier for some foreigners to pay instead of having to pay in local currency. But one challenge I have as a business accepting cryptocurrency, working with other crypto companies, is the accounting aspect of it, because the rates are pretty volatile at times. So the income that you earn can suddenly be less the week after, and you will have still a lot of your expenses in fiat, in Korean won. So until you're actually able to pay a lot of your expenses in cryptocurrencies as well, it's a risk that you're taking on. And I think what you have to ask yourself is, does that risk outweigh the benefits of accepting cryptocurrency, and will it really boost my business? I don't think it will really boost the business, but I think it will maybe offer a potential better payment solution for foreigners that don't have the local currency.
I think it's a good marketing tool. I think that being the first in everything is a good marketing tool to have, marketing scheme. But I think that, realistically speaking, I think it's not going to actually happen too often because people don't really want to use cryptocurrencies. they want to afford it, they want to afford it, and it's too volatile to spend. I think they're looking for long-term investment or short-term investment, so they would want to, sell it, not, spend it right now. So I think that's the reality at this point. But I think, because it can have accounting, problems, but if people don't really use it, then I think it's a good marketing tool anyway. So I think it's good to do it anyway.
Is a good answer. Is there anyone else that has a question for? Okay, all right. Let me run over here. Unfortunately, we don't have multiple mics. So.
Yeah.
Who was it? I'll get to you in a moment.
Thanks a lot for coming by and talking to us. I have a quick question here for the representative from Gopax. Why do you still allow foreigners to deposit funds when the other Korean exchanges do not? And do you have questions from Korean authorities because of that?
Answer to the extent you can.
Okay, so I don't think there is a politically correct answer to this one. Actually, there is for this one. Why we're accepting, deposits from foreigners? Actually, the law requires, and a lot of people think that there is a cryptocurrency regulation or cryptocurrency exchange regulation in Korea. In fact, there isn't. Not that we're in favor of that. We think, actually, Gopax, we at Gopax think a healthy, reasonable, sound regulation that both, helps the industry and investors is necessary. And we're finding a balance where it's the right point. But at this moment, there is no real regulation. It takes months and years to come up with law, legislations, and everything. So there isn't anything. The only thing there is this kind of self-regulation guide that's put up by the blockchain, association. It's not exactly mandatory. There are, gray areas in itself and self-contradicting. Probably shouldn't be saying that. But anyway, there isn't any reason why we shouldn't accept deposits from foreigners who are residents in Korea, because they're registered in Korea just like any other Koreans. They have, their ID numbers. The reason we don't accept, like foreigners who are not residents is because we don't have a means of, verifying their identity. And they cannot verify their identity, they cannot authenticate where they're registered. So we can't really, follow these people, so the KYC requirement is not met. But if you're a resident in Korea and a foreigner, why not? What's the problem?
Do you get questions from authorities because of that?
As I said, there is no ground for them to. And
Do you?
no. There's all I can say is there can be indirect influences via this and that, but not substantially, really. No.
So to add to that, you guys are partnered with Shinhan Bank, right? And I know my uncle.
Shinhan Bank is an investor and a partner. Yes.
Right. So my uncle, he's a Jijumdown at one of the Shinhan banks, and I had a
Good for him.
talk with him. He was telling me how the government is pressuring the banks,
Yes.
like non-stop.
Sure, of course.
But they're invested into you, and the government has high incentives to keep foreign currency reserves at a stable limit. But as you know, Chinese investors were using Korea as a funnel to take cash out and launder money, right? So I'm wondering how you guys balance those kinds of political issues, gray areas, so to speak.
That's not exactly a gray area for a cryptocurrency exchange because all our clients have met their KYC requirements. We have their IDs, not IDs, but we verify their identity through mobile phones. And if you want to increase your withdrawal limit, we take their, your photo IDs and your date of birth and all that information. So we know who you are. We have your activities on your record. And if the government is curious about the AML, which you mentioned is the anti-money laundering requirements, and we have our own internal policy, which is in line with both the government and the bank that we bank with, Shinhan Bank. And there is, also automated policy system which detects suspicious behavior. You can't really, normal circumstances, completely bypass that kind of filters. And there's full accountability to your account anyway, so if something's suspicious or we suspect that you were taking drug dealing money out of Korea and putting it into China to buy weapons of mass destruction, roll it out. And that will be on the record.
All right, thank you for that question.
Hi, my name is Wu. I have a question about the blockchain. Can blockchain be the next internet? Because when I look at like Steemit or DTube, the decentralized streaming video platforms, I feel like there's a potential that this could be the next internet. I was just curious about your opinions.
All right, who would like to answer that question?
Sounds like a difficult question, huh? Can it be the next internet? Well, you know, all blockchain is run on the internet anyway, right? So can it be the new internet? I think a lot of websites and services on the internet, they had quite a hard time receiving funding after the dot-com bubble in 2000s, right? There were a lot of social networking services, and they've all had a really hard time capitalizing what they're selling. Right? Twitter and Facebook and YouTube only recently have developed strong business models for the internet. But there's a lot of services that are just littered with advertising so much that you can't see the website. That's a lot of the times that's the case for Korean newspapers, right? And so I think there's a lot more services that can survive and maybe prosper on the internet through blockchain technologies. I see blockchain technologies more as a catalyst, right? It gives you the energy to maybe prolong or create value for your business and sustain a cash flow positive business. So that's
So if I may answer that question as well. I've thought about this quite a lot. I think it's more an evolution of the internet. So you have Web 2.0, Web 3.0, etc., etc. And I think this is one of those evolutions. And the internet has various protocols. For example, you have the HTTP protocol. This is just an additional protocol to the internet that people will use. And the same with protocols, the HTTP wasn't the only protocol that was able to serve information. And so you're going to have competing protocols, which you also have in the blockchain. You're going to have competing blockchains. I think eventually there will be a particular blockchain ecosystem that will become the popular one. But that doesn't mean that HTTP or the internet as we know it today will completely disappear. I think this is just an evolution of that protocol. Is there anyone else that has a question? The last one. All right, I see one last one, so that's perfect.
So actually, I have two questions, so you could right, so for cryptocurrency to be a more commonly accepted means of payment, I think there's got to be a way, unless she's all bullish about Bitcoin, she would have to, she would need some sort of method to exchange it to the local currency or to US dollar. And I think that in itself is a big hurdle for merchants. And so my first question is, do you know of any services that are into the payment processing, meaning making it easier for the local merchants to exchange cryptocurrency into KRW or USD? And my question number two is, if you don't know anyone who's into this service or then for some cryptopreneur to start such business, well, what do you think are some of the requirements in order for it to actually work?
So I actually love to answer that first question. So CryptoMinded I've been working on CryptoMinded over the past 8 months, and I've been focusing on the individual investor until now. But the reason I actually wanted this panel is because I'm pivoting CryptoMinded to focus on other businesses. And we as a company are actually building an accounting and invoicing solution right now. So yes, I have looked into payment processes like that as well. There are a few. You have Coinbase Merchant, for example. I'm not sure if Coinbase is available here in Korea. But Coinbase Commerce, that's the name, Coinbase Commerce, that allows companies to accept payments in crypto. And there's other solutions like BitPay and the Request.Network that they're building. In summary though, like all these solutions aren't perfect yet. And so there's still a lot of work to be done there, especially I believe, and that's why we are pivoting that way into the accounting and invoicing, like the invoicing and accounting part of it. Because even though these platforms do issue an invoice, these invoices are not compliant with the regulation in Europe and in most other countries except the US. It's really hard to account for different rates in cryptocurrencies once you start exchanging cryptocurrencies for other cryptocurrencies or for like euros, or you start paying with it or accepting it. All these transaction rates have to be accounted for. That's really difficult right now, and actually I do it myself manually. I'm not entirely sure if there's a solution right now that does it, but if not, I'm definitely building one. The second question is, I think it does essentially building an exchange, which is really hard. So, and there's a lot of government regulation, well, yeah, maybe not, but a lot of things to keep in mind when you start an exchange. What I would recommend is looking into potentially partnering with existing exchanges to make a solution that would make it easier for entrepreneurs, for example with Gopax, exactly, to make it easier for entrepreneurs to immediately exchange their cryptocurrencies into fiat. It's actually something I've been thinking about as well, as a feature of that platform that I'm building, to allow entrepreneurs to set a sort of balance between fiat and crypto that they'd like to keep at all times, and integrate with an API from an exchange to be able to do that. Does that answer your question? All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to add something to that? No?
Can I add one to?
Yeah.
And I have shared a similar view with Dylan about payment processing. But kind of when I was coming to this thing and the opportunities for business, and you're trying to find a business opportunity for merchants in regards to cryptocurrency. But I think we need to, it's not really giving a solution, but kind of solving the problem or asking the question backwards. Is that you're trying to find a solution to the question, where the question is, how do I replace the current payment solutions with cryptocurrency? The current existing solution is just cash, just credit card, or PayPal, or all these payment solutions. You're trying to replace it with cryptocurrency. Why? Why would you want to replace it with Bitcoin? Why would you want to replace it with, I don't know, Litecoin, Ripple, Stellar? What value does that add to the merchant? And it is a good marketing point that you're the first cryptocurrency accepting whatever business you're the, you know, like the first bookseller to be doing that, or first car dealer to be doing that. Sure. But what value does it really add to your business in terms of using that payment, the cryptocurrency payment solution, instead of the existing one? You need to ask yourself that question. There is no clear answer to that. There is no reason for you to switch to that. You're solving the problem actually the other way around.
So if I can add something to that, I'm not entirely sure I agree, because essentially as a business, especially an international business, payments are, to put it frankly, a pain in the ass. I was trying to pay for an event venue in Shanghai, China, I had to go to the exchange in Belgium, get cash, fly over all that cash to the event venue, and then pay someone, because I couldn't pay the venue in cash, I had to then pay an employee of that venue with the cash, and then she would pay the venue. Because I couldn't make bank transfers. So, and with the currency conversion rates on international bank transfers, it's really hard sometimes for a business to account for that as well, or to keep that in mind. Not everyone is able to make easily transactions across the world. So I think if your business is more internationally minded and you have a lot of international customers, then there is actually a solid reason for you to accept cryptocurrencies. If you're, however, a local store here that's selling, you know, a local restaurant selling Korean barbecue, then maybe there's not. So yeah, you really have to ask yourself, is there a good reason for me to accept it in the first place? Okay, so one last question I want to ask you guys before we wrap up. What advice would you give to the audience that is here today and that all stayed, so thank you for that, by the way. What advice would you give them if they're interested in either working in this space or becoming a cryptopreneur, etc.?
I think there's like no one place to start with. I think, as I mentioned before, there's no actual right, starting point. But there are many platforms that I can, can I provide the list? Sure. I don't know. Like if you're, if you're Korean, you can, drop by Nons, which is the, the blockchainers, and I'm on the platform as a CryptoSeoul. I run the channel there, and they're very passionate people about blockchain education and business making. So they're, so in Korea, so I think they're really legitimate player to visit and the place to visit. So I recommend that, and also a lot of YouTube watching, a lot of, I think the YouTube is like the mecca of, cryptocurrency videos and like lectures and stuff like that. So if you can visit conferences abroad, then I think, YouTube is the way to go, like live stream like this event. So, and also like the crypto entrepreneurs, I think networking is the best, best tool. And going to conferences, networking events like this, I think that would really help to build a community and network. And you can, actually the space is pretty small at the point, so if you can just go to several conferences, then you can just meet everybody there. So basically, you can meet all the major players. So I think that'll get you in the space and kind of get you involved and hear what the consensus is about. And yeah, I think that'll be the starting point.
Yeah, just to give you an idea how small the community actually is, I met Ella in Shanghai, and Ella knows someone at DCAM who helped me get the venue, and then Ella knew Erica who helped get them as speakers. So I didn't actually know any of these people before this event, but if you are willing to put in some time and effort into cryptocurrencies as an entrepreneur, there's still so many problems to solve. So I would just say, figure out what is a problem, ask people what are problems, and figure out a way how to solve them. Build a community around it and just iterate and learn from the process. Cryptominded started as an individual, as a hobby. I was literally making the website while watching Game of Thrones, not Korean drama at the time. But yeah, basically, now I'm addicted to Korean drama. Yeah, so I was just making that website, and then I was still in my full-time job, because the reason I wanted to make this website is because I felt that a lot of people didn't really understand cryptocurrencies and had a lot of questions. So I wanted to provide a place where people could go to have those questions answered and build a community around it. And that's why I'm organizing this event. I'm not making any profit on this. I just enjoy connecting people and helping people learn more about cryptocurrency and growing the community that we have. But now I've learned that it's a really, really tough business focusing on the individual investor, because there's only so many ways you can monetize that. But there's still a lot of problems to solve in the B2B aspects of cryptocurrencies, such as accounting, invoicing, payments, etc., adoption, technology, scalability. And I would just suggest start somewhere, build a community, find problems to solve them, and learn from the process, and keep moving forward.
Okay, so I have two advices for two different audiences. One for the Korean audience coming from an exchange is that we need to understand the risk of cryptocurrency investment more, and I don't think that's very prevalent in Korea. The reason it has shown so much growth and value is because of its, it's largely unknown area, and being unknown is uncertainty, and uncertainty is risk. So there's high risk involved in this market, and everyone should be more aware of that. And as an exchange, we're trying to be more socially responsible about that in many different ways. And two, more because I wasn't expecting which audience this audience was going to be like, but then I see there's a lot of foreigners, and probably the crypto-minded community is mostly foreign. So to represent, because there's a lot of conflicting and chaotic news about the South Korea's cryptocurrency regulation atmosphere. I mean, the headline the other day that one of the regulator had to be overworked and passed away, unfortunately, most of his family. And it's not a laughing matter. But about that is, a lot of people, even within South Korea, we think of it as kind of like an antagonistic battle between the crypto investors, there's exchanges, banks, and government. And even within government, there are different concerns. The Ministry of Law is thinking one thing, the National Tax Service is thinking a different thing, the Bank of Korea is thinking another thing, all that. But we shouldn't really look at it as antagonistic. It's actually, well, there are going to be battles and conflicts, and people are not going to be agreeing on things. But it's a path, it's a journey to finding a balance where this industry finds its, focal point, and it's a balance point, and at one point it's a saturation point where all the businesses are doing this thing, and we define these things. Right now it's largely undefined. Nobody knows what it's going to be like. So it's just a very complicated process in the journey. Not really, well, one party has to kill the other, one must die and the other can exist. Not that kind of business, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I was actually, I had hoped to get one of the most famous Korean news reporters from on cryptocurrencies here as well tonight, but fortunately you couldn't make it. But fake news is oh, there is one reporter here. But yeah, basically, like it's like news really affects the markets, and Korea kind of dominates the crypto market. So any news coming from Korea to the Western markets, to the United States, to Europe, and that's not properly translated or not accurate in context, actually has effect on the market. So if you're someone here as well that speaks Korean and is a foreigner and has connections to media in the West, that is an opportunity as well, because accurate reporting is very necessary.
I think to get into this space, I think using good resources like Cryptominded is a good place to start. And I also think a lot of people talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but don't actually use them for their actual purpose. Right? I know loads of people that just have Bitcoin on exchanges and Ethereum on exchanges, and I think like the best way to really understand the space is to understand why they need these things and actually try to use them for what they were built for. Right? Like, so try using like Lightning networks, and try using like multi-sig wallets, and like try using like Ethereum dApps. Like, you'll see how frustrating and slow it is. You'll see why they're going crazy about how to scale it. Right? Like, so like I advise like a lot of people to get their money, like get their coins off of exchanges. Like, try using decentralized exchanges like Dylan said, like 0x and Radar Relay are fantastic decentralized exchanges. Experiencing it firsthand is completely different to seeing the price go from like $1 to $10. Right? So that would be my advice.
And discover the problems in the space that way too, and potentially build solutions to it. All right, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you for joining in on this panel and sharing your opinion with the audience. If you want to stay around, you can for a few more minutes, but at 10 we have to, unfortunately, oh, it's actually already 10, I see, almost 10 before 10. If you want to join the Cryptominded community or get in touch with me, that's my, oh, that's actually the wrong sponsor, that's really awkward. The sponsor is Crypto Panic, not ICO Alert. ICO Alert was the sponsor for San Francisco. But if you want to get in touch